Hello and welcome to the Hard Card podcast, recorded and filmed at Authentic Collectables HQ in Perth, Western Australia. Today we're joined by a man with a surname synonymous with Aussie motorsport, and that is Jack Perkins, son of the great Larry Perkins and a successful racer, and now broadcaster and farmer and whatever else he happens to be at any time himself. Jack, thanks for joining us. How are you today?
Yeah, I'm good, mate. I call myself sort of, what do they say, jack of all, master of none.
Well, look, that was going to be my first question, and this is an interesting question for you. What have you been up to this week? Because I never quite know if you've been, elbows deep in a V8 Holden block, or driving a cedar on a farm somewhere, or hosting Sunrise, or I never quite know what you've been doing.
Yeah. Well, this week obviously been after all the supercars is done and dusted, sort of more predominantly in my workshop, which is now thankfully based on my property about an hour out of Melbourne. So I run the engineering business is my 9 to 5, where we manufacture parts for old cars, restore cars, and do all the old sort of Perkins stuff. And this week's been pretty busy on the online store that I run through Perkins Engineering. So we sort of sell a few of the parts that we make, and some of the stuff we've ended up surplus to requirements off the cars we've restored, and then do a few hats and T-shirts there to keep the cash flow ticking along. And this week's been pretty busy with that, and just sort of starting to think about cleaning up for Christmas and what's going to be in the workshop next year and stuff like that. So it's been good to just kind of catch up on a few things while we've been away, obviously in Adelaide. And on the way home from Adelaide, I called into the farm to see how harvest was going, and the old man's up there kind of keeping that happening, which is quite good.
Do you kind of like this eclectic life in and out of motorsport? Like, you've got all these different roles inside the sport, and then you've got these other interests, and in the farming side of things. Do you sort of enjoy that diversity in life?
Well, I do, and I guess I've been sort of diversifying for a long time, because I never had the luxury of being a full-time supercar driver getting paid $500,000 a year. So everything's always been a hustle. And it was actually, I got some great advice way back in about 2008 from Craig Baird. And he said, that getting that gig where you get paid big bucks, just one gig, is hard work. But if you do 5 or 6 gigs that add up to the big gig, you're probably doing all right. And then if you lose a gig, you sort of don't go broke or don't go belly up in the process, and you still got other things to keep you busy. So I've got to thank Beardo for that mantra, because I've kind of always tried to keep the hustle alive and just do what I can to put food on the table. Ultimately, now I've got a family to look after as well, so there's a few more mouths to feed. But ultimately, I've always worked for a living per se, and anything racing wise has been a bit of a bonus.
The farming stuff I find particularly interesting, just having actually grown up in the country myself as well. Was that always like an interest of yours alongside motorsport? Was it something you became interested in at some sort of slightly later stage in life? What's your background with the agricultural stuff?
Yeah, well, I really am interested in the farming because my family, my great-grandfather, a bloke by the name of Clifton Perkins, he came back from World War I in 1916 and got given a land title as soldier settlement, which a lot of the Australian diggers got. Thanks for your efforts in World War I. Now, how do we get everyone out of the city and kind of promote those regional areas? So our family got given a land title up there in the northwest corner of Victoria, and I'm proud to say that Dad now owns that property, and it's gone through sort of 4 generations. So I've always had a lot of interest from Dad and his dad on the property side of things, and the fact that it backs onto a big desert national park. It means quite a lot to our family, and the progression into the specific farming side of things. I mean, I think Dad's probably owned the farm now. He bought it off his uncle for maybe 20, 25 years, and we sort of share farmed with a neighbour, and then sort of that got parked for a while, and then in 2012, one of my mates who's based up sort of 20k down the road wanted to do something, and we decided to go farming on our land again in a similar share farming arrangement, but kind of having more hands-on involvement. So whether it was Dad or I to be there in harvest, and we do a bit of the mechanical preparation on the harvesters and the tractors and bits and pieces. So we're not what we call in the game Collins Street farmers, which is people that just own land in Melbourne and try and clip the ticket on the way through. We sort of try and be a bit more hands-on. And if I could make a living and keep a wife up there, I'd probably almost live there full time. But you're 3 hours out of Adelaide, 5.5 out of Melbourne, and it's probably just not quite enough land to sustain a fantastic living on our side, which is why when we combine our 2,000 acres with my mate who's got 3,500, we've collectively put in over 5,000 acres of grain and cereals and bits and pieces. So it works out quite good. But yeah, I've got a great passion for it. People from the land kind of resonate with my old man and our family, and ultimately I sort of joke to people that we're putting food on the table for everyone, because our barley could end up in a beer you drink, or it might end up as animal feed, but either way we're growing it. And it's nice. It's a nice environment and industry to be involved with. So yeah, I do enjoy it, and I just don't get to do as much now, especially with the kids around. We got more time at home, closer to Melbourne.
Let's have a chat about your racing career. It's coming up to 2 decades really since you really burst into the supercars scene and even the main game scene. And I know that because I started roughly around the same time working the paddock, and we're aging at the same rate, for better or for worse. But how do you reflect on your driving career? It's kind of been, I don't know, it's been an odd path maybe. You've sort of been in and out, built a great career, on the enduro side. How do you sort of reflect on it all?
Yeah, I mean, I probably, reflect on it with mixed emotions. On the whole, I would probably say I'm disappointed with what I haven't been able to achieve. But then on the flip side, adding in the diabetes stuff, I'm really proud of what I've been able to achieve. But, probably it's all come down to timing and situations, I guess. For me, I look back at the Formula Ford days. I never got to do the National Formula Ford Series properly. The category went through a big evolution. We started with an old car, which you guys, we were talking about this the other night at the gala.
Yep.
We started with the old car with the Ken engine, and then the National Series the following year, you needed a 2001 model car and a new engine, which in hindsight's been a great thing for the category. But at the time, the engines were like $20,000 and the road car was about $14,000, and it just didn't make any sense. So in some respects, and ultimately what happened was we jumped in a supercar because Dad had ran 4 cars in the main game the year before, and it was this will sound silly, but in some ways it was cheaper just to go supercar racing because all the assets were there, the staff, and all we had to do was kind of pay the bills. And it's hard for people to get their head around that because, it's an expensive game. But I liken it to, if your parents owned a milk bar, grabbing a couple of cans of Coke and some lolly bags, it doesn't cost them as much as it would retail-wise. And that's sort of why we did what we did. And it's probably similar for Mason Kelly now, or in that situation, to go racing and write a check for hundreds of thousands of dollars to go to another team and do Formula Ford or something. It's not as easy as sort of running it yourself when you've got everything sitting there. So, yeah, I'm disappointed that I didn't get a chance to, have a crack at winning the National Formula Ford Series. I did a couple of national rounds in that old car, and we ran really quite good. When you look back at it, a young bloke called Daniel Ricciardo was in one of those races, and he was further back than fullback at that stage. But our careers have certainly gone on to have different levels of success. But then, we got into the supercars, into the development series in 2006, and just gelled really quickly, and our cars were competitive, and both myself and Shane Price ran good. And, I guess from that point on, the rest is sort of history, been in and out of the game quite a lot. I wish I had have been able to do 2 or 3 years in a row in a good environment with good engineers, but, that chance is gone now, so there's no point dwelling on it. But, I'm proud to have won a race for the Holden Racing team and stood on the podium with my mate James Courtney at Bathurst. So, I always want more, I think. But, I've probably done better than, a lot of other people as well.
Well, I'm still racing against your old Formula Ford. So if you want to talk about stalled driving career progression, that's mine's much worse than yours, I can assure you. But do you sort of ever look back at, there was that kind of really rapid promotion to the main game in 2007. Was it, with the family team, there's obviously pressure attached to that. You were with Shane. There was 2 rookies in the team. Was it maybe just a bit much? Do you ever reflect on maybe it was a little bit too much at that stage of your career?
Yeah, I mean, 100%. And the hard part was, there was some stuff going on with wrecks and licenses in the background, and ultimately Dad didn't have any money to pay anyone, and it was kind of like, oh, well, you can drive it and won't cost me much. But, I think if I went back and did the math on it all and did the development series again in 2007, I'd like to think, having finished third the year before, that we probably would have improved on that and then set ourselves up in a better position for 2008 and where that would have been. But, you can't change it. But, ultimately, I think by the time I was in main game, I may have only done 15 car races in total, if that, when you add up the Formula Ford and the development series. So it certainly happened quite quickly. And in this day and age, I probably wouldn't have qualified for a super license. So,
Yeah.
it'd be hard to kind of replicate that. But, I think it probably could have been worse as well. I don't think we tore up a heap of gear, but, I've seen people come in and cause quite a lot of damage. But, we showed glimpses, I think, at Winton about round 4 when I got my hands on a VE Commodore, qualified in the top 10. But, yeah, it's tough, You look back on it now, I feel like I'm driving better now than I ever have. And I think, how the hell did I do it back then? I didn't know half the stuff I know now. But, it's just a funny old game. Certainly the experience helps, especially in different forms of racing. But, I'd find it very hard now for young blokes to get through with the testing restrictions and bits and pieces, the money that's required. It would be even harder again, I would have thought, to crack into it. And I guess I'm very fortunate that, I kind of still made enough of an impression to be here some 19 years later.
It's sort of, I get the feeling that you do really enjoy your racing now, for all the ups and downs throughout your career, that you're in a place where you can enjoy it. I mean, like, you're hanging out with your mates like JC and Timmy Blanchard. Obviously it has been some tough going for BRT in the main game, but it does seem like you're having fun when you're rocking up to the racetrack at the moment.
Yeah, and look, to be honest, I really started having fun when I raced the Super Tour in New Zealand with Greg Murphy as his co-driver, because, as a kid, I always wanted to race with Dad, and I never really got that opportunity. But, I grew up kind of idolising Murph and Russell Ingall and Scaife and Lowndes. And then, I got to race with Russ at Bathurst a couple of times. But then racing with Greg in New Zealand in the number 51 car, it was such a cool thing for me. And, there was just no kind of idea on how we would go. We would turn up and just drive the cars, and had so much fun. We were very successful. And then you'd get out of the car and you'd have a beer. And it was like, this is actually really fun. And then, racing the sports sedan sort of sometime after that, and then into just proper co-driving, and really going to the races and thinking, hey, we're a good chance of winning Bathurst here for those 5 years at HRT with JC, and then again with Will Brown. You're going to Bathurst to win. You're not making up the numbers. And then, this year obviously was quite different. We working with the Blanchard team, their first year as a 2-car team. It was a struggle, but, you can still enjoy elements of it, although the disappointment of not getting a result is there. But, yeah, it's, you've got to just reflect at this stage of my career and say, hey, like, this is pretty cool to be getting, paid or whatever to be coming away racing at Bathurst, and how long will it last? I mean, I don't know. So you just kind of enjoy the moment and see if we can, keep doing a better job and bring the car back straight. And, the phone seems to keep calling every year, which is really cool as well.
That must have been nice, delivering that Super 2 kind of breakthrough for BRT for Tim and John. That must have been like a nice moment for yourself.
Yeah, I mean, the whole thing was really good because I had a struggle last year with Erebus in the Super 2 program. Just wasn't working for me, and I really have always been one to doubt myself first and foremost my whole sort of driving time. I always doubt myself, which has probably been my downfall. But to kind of rock up and do 2 races, and Townsville was good. To get a pole position and a win was like, yeah, that's awesome. But I really wanted to get back to Sandown just to prove that it wasn't, one hot day makes a summer. And we got to Sandown and it was wet conditions and we got pole and won another race. So I thought, well, yeah, this is good for me personally, but obviously for the BRT team, it's been a struggle for them, all year. And just to see the joy on the whole team's face, Aaron Love put some good results together last year in that car and got them on the podium. And I think their first Super 2 win, but we got their first pole position and first round win. So I joked to Tim that, if there's ever a Super 2 on a roll at BRT, I'll be on it forever, which is cool. And, again, I talk about people that I grew up with and Murph and those guys. I got to work with Wally Story. And, I remember as a kid, I used to go to the Dunlop tyre tests with Wayne Gardner and Dick Johnson and Dad. And I'd take my little fun cart there and I'd go and annoy all those blokes, including Wally. Especially when my little fun cart ran out of fuel, I'd be trying to steal petrol off someone so I could keep blazing around. So to work with Wally and have good success with him and just get along really well, it's just another sort of tick in a box of things I've, been able to do whilst driving.
What does the future hold for you in terms of racing? Is the plan to keep doing the co-driving stuff and, the odd Super 2 appearance and that sort of stuff for the next couple of years? Are you sort of, what's the plan from here?
Yeah, I mean, my life ambition's always been to win Bathurst, so I'd love to keep doing it. But if I'm not doing a good enough job and I'm too slow or not fast enough or crashing the car, then again I want to be the first person that says, hey, this maybe not for me anymore, and don't get in the way of a young bloke that could do a better job. But it was hard because obviously the car and the team were a little bit uncompetitive this year. So had I have not done the Super 2 stuff, I'd be starting to think, hey, maybe I need to look quite quickly at pulling the pin on all this. But, I was able to match JC in the Bathurst 1000 in terms of pace and times, and we weren't the slowest out there in terms of co-drivers. And then, like I said, to kind of race up the front and have the best average finishing position in the Super 2. I read on the Supercars website there the other day, it sort of shows, well, maybe I'm still quite quick if I can get the tools that I need. So, yeah, I mean, I'd like to keep at least try and get another year for sure and then see what happens. Like I always tell people that aren't quite across the age of race car drivers that my dad kept going till he was 53 and I'm only 38. So I don't reckon I'll get to 53, but I'd like to think I can get into that 40s and do a couple more.
You mentioned, some of those old memories of growing up in the sport. You've run some amazing Larry-inspired retro liveries on Super 2 cars recently. You've obviously got a strong family. You obviously feel that strong family connection to this sport.
Yeah, I feel a lot of that in a family sense, but I also... I've got a great poster on the wall up here, which is the Tiga founding members from 1988. And why that's my favourite poster is every single one of us that's in the industry kind of owes a lot to those guys. The history of the sport means so much to me. A lot of these young kids wouldn't really understand, but, back in the early 80s, there was like Peter Brock and Alan Moffat were the only 2 guys getting paid to go racing. And the rest of everyone else had to turn up, with their own funding and everything and go racing. But in 1988, the Tiga guys got together to say, hey, there's no point in Brock and Moffat being the only 2 or Johnson to get paid because no one's going to come and pay tickets to watch 2 blokes race against each other. How about we make a fist of this and put together an Australian Touring Car Championship as we see it today? And then in 1996, they got involved with Tony Cochran and SEL. And, to me, that is just so important to what we've got today because if those guys weren't around to basically put everything on the line, that there would be no celebrations and so on, and no Bathurst and no nothing. So to me, the retro liveries are just a way to, tilt my hat to Dad, but obviously to everyone in that 1988 poster and everyone even people that privateers, Peter Jansen and Murray Carter and all those guys, we owe a lot to those people, and they're often never spoken of in this day and age, which I'm pretty keen to keep that alive, and big fan of the retro round that's no longer around. But I just think it's really important to celebrate your history, and it's no different to the country of Australia. I'm a proud Australian, and my grandparents fought under that Aussie flag, so it means a lot to me as well in that sense. So I think you've got to celebrate the past and be thankful and grateful for what we've got today.
Do you think some of that connection is fostered or grows because of the hands-on work that you do on Perkins engineering cars that your old man, built and raced and that sort of stuff?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I was just so interested as a kid, though, even, I used to love being involved in the workshop and working on the cars and just hanging out with the mechanics. I just thought those guys were the best. And, I've just always had a passion and interest on it. And when I was even in high school, I used to try and keep the Perkins engineering chassis histories alive, keep trying to do what Aaron Noonan does effectively, keep our own records intact and go and watch them in the Konica series back then and just see, people that had a Perkins car. I used to think, hey, that's pretty cool. It's one of our cars. So certainly today, I feel like I'm preserving history as well with a lot of the restorations we're doing. And, a lot of that came to the fore when Dad, announced that we were selling wholly out to the Kelly boys back in about 2012. There was people that owned old Perkins cars and engines said, well, what do we do with all our stuff? And it's like, yeah, well, it's a good point. And, I started pulling stuff out of the rubbish bin because I knew there was a bit of a legacy there. And the fact that I've been able to turn it into a business now and keep it all going is cool in one respect. How long it goes for, I'm not sure, but certainly through COVID and in later years, there's been significant interest in Holden and in particular in Holden and the old cars. So I'll just ride that wave as long as I can, and hopefully my kids are interested and can kind of keep the legacy of what not only my dad did, but my grandpa as well, because they've both left a lasting legacy in Australian motorsport and indeed manufacturing and engineering. So that's probably where the further interest comes from. It's not just buying race cars; it's kind of designing them and manufacturing them, the real sort of Jack Brabham type stuff. So I think that's what sort of sets it all a bit different to some of the other legends with respect to those guys that didn't design their cars per se, but it's a really unique thing, and I often get a lot of nice comments and feedback on our YouTube channel for people that can resonate with what we do. So it's really neat that there's so many people out there that still sort of support Dad and pay their respects to what we might show on Facebook or what we're restoring. So yeah, from that point of view, it's pretty neat. And the amount of people that come up to me now at the track. James Moff and I used to always joke that people would come up to you and say, how's your dad? How's your dad? Which is, probably natural. But now it's, man, we love the YouTube channel. We love the YouTube. We love what you're doing with the old cars. So it's pretty cool. They don't even ask me how the race is going.
You've, you're not locked into full supercar schedules and all that sort of stuff. Is there any racing outside of supercars? You touched on a bit of the stuff you've done outside of supercars. Anything in Australia that catches your fancy? Anything overseas that's on the bucket list for you while you're still actively race driving?
Yeah, I mean, I really enjoyed racing the sports sedan, but again, it's very tricky. Everything you want to do outside of supercars, you've got to kind of bring some level of funding or own the car or something. So I'm not quite in that luxurious position where I can kind of do what I want in that respect. I've always had to work pretty hard, but I have, and I have not made a secret of it, but for 10 or 15 years I've tried to do something in road course NASCAR land. I got close once in the truck racing in motorsport in Canada. I think I got the budget down to $75,000 US, which was still too much money for me. But if I could one day get something like that together, it would be pretty cool. I've been chatting a lot to Shane this year over in the States, and he's a big supporter of the Perkins engineering stuff. And we talk a bit of shit throughout the year about various opportunities and things that are going on. So it's going to get harder and harder as I get older. But, I think my driver seeding or something like that might lend itself to some GT stuff. But again, it's big dollars, and I don't know. I feel like I'm getting older to learn new skills. Someone said go and race TCR. I'm like, just not sure how front wheel drive 2-litre touring car is really going to help me at Bathurst in a Gen 3 Mustang. But if racing's racing, I get that. But sometimes some of those skills are very tricky to maximise. And I love being competitive. I don't like just making up the numbers. So, if I go and do something, you don't just do it in halves and, or do it to go and get the photos. It's to try and make a fist of it and really try and perform really well and showcase your ability. So, yeah, it's not at the forefront of my mind, now, especially with my family. My priorities have changed a lot, but I'm hoping that I can do some racing. I watched Dale Earnhardt Jr. He tries to do a bit of racing here and there so his girls can see that he's been a race car driver, because the rest of it's just storytelling. So, I kind of can resonate with what he's trying to do. So maybe I keep doing a one-off development series thing for a few more years and get the kids out to Sandown or something like that.
Alongside the race driving and the farming and building race cars, all that sort of stuff, you've become very handy TV talent as well. How has that all kind of come about? How did that come about that you've ended up sort of being this sort of TV star too?
Yeah, it's funny. I don't get to do as much of it as I like. Obviously, the last 4 years I've been working with Channel 7 and I've really enjoyed it, but they've only got 6 races of the year. So you don't get to do the whole season, and you don't also get that expanded broadcast time where you can, potentially sort of show the sport in a way that Mark Larkham does, or Garth Tander or Neil Crompton in the expansive way they do it. So it's a different audience on 7, but I've thoroughly enjoyed it. And I guess the TV stuff, when it actually goes back to about 2012, I think back when the Australian Grand Prix was on Channel 10 and it was a non-championship race, the guys at Channel 10 first reached out to me and said, hey, would you like to come and commentate the races with Richard Crail? And I said, look, I've never done any of that. I never even thought about it, but sounds pretty cool. And at the same time, I was doing a little bit of World Series Sprint Car commentary with Wade Ornger. They wanted to inject a bit of V8 supercar knowledge and experience and kind of pollinate that across the sprint car stuff. So I'd started to do a bit there, and it's just taken off from there. I think we did the Grand Prix for 4 or 5 years and did bits and pieces on RPM. And then when they lost the rights and 7 picked it up, Anna Stone was in charge of Channel 7, being the producer for motorsport. And I've known Anna, obviously she's Ross Stone's daughter from Stone Brothers Racing, and known her for a long time. And she's been a great supporter of mine in the TV space, and sort of got me to get involved with the 7 stuff. So, I really have to thank her for that. And I learn a lot from Mark Howard. I speak to Mark Howard quite a bit, old Howie from the Howie Games, and he's really helped me a lot with the TV stuff. So, I really got to thank those guys and girls for helping. And I'm not sure how the TV thing's going to change moving forward, because I think next year's the last year for 7. But hopefully there's more opportunities to do it, because I never went to university or anything to be a TV guy, but I kind of enjoy talking about motor racing, and I get compliments and feedback that the way that I can talk about it is good, and a way that people can resonate. So that's kind of the main aim, to use your experience and paint a picture and tell a story. And hopefully there's a few more invitations back to do that stuff moving forward.
All right, let's finish with the Authentic Collectables Top 10 Shootout, 10 rapid-fire questions, and unsurprisingly, some are related to collectibles. Now, Jack, who was your sporting idol growing up? I'm going to guess you're going to say your old man here.
Well, yeah, it's funny. If you're going to say motorsport, it's hard to go past Dad, but I will say Adam Gilchrist. I love Adam Gilchrist. I love me cricket, so one of my prized possessions is a signed Adam Gilchrist bat with a Puma Castrol sticker on it. So, and I got to work with Gilly at Channel 10, so that was cool.
Well, that answers one of my next questions, which was about some of your favourite non-motorsport memorabilia. That's a pretty good answer. Did you, when you were growing up, did you collect motor racing memorabilia?
Yeah, I did, and I've only recently started putting it out on display, because over time I've just always had it in boxes or whatever. And I mean, the model cars were clearly something I've started collecting from a young age, especially when I started driving cars and bits and pieces. But I've collected sort of things off people that have now become memorabilia in my own mind. So I've got a couple posters signed from Peter Brock, which I've recently found. I've got a pair of Arai gloves from Barry Sheen he gave to me when I was a kid. They're just mechanics gloves. He wore them once at Phillip Island riding a scooter around the pits, and I asked him if I could have them, and I've still got them. So some little things like that, pretty sentimental stuff. And a cricket bat, little cricket bat that my grandpa carved out of a bit of timber in the war with a pocket knife. It's one of the other little collectibles I got. So I've got a heap of little trinkets in a glass case actually, which is pretty special.
Out of the model cars and things you've collected from your own career, is there a favourite bit of memorabilia, maybe a helmet, or is there something that sort of stands out as?
Yeah, well, it's funny. And when Dad grew up, when I grew up with Dad, he'd never kept all of his driving gear. So I've never really sold anything. I've got one of every year race suits and helmets, so they're all pretty special. All the stuff just behind me, you might be able to see. That's my Gold Coast race winning race suit. On a mannequin. So anything from the Gold Coast that year is pretty special to me. Obviously my first win. And then the Bathurst podium, I got the suit. I've actually got a piston out of the engine, which is pretty cool. So yeah, I've got heaps. I'm a hoarder. My wife will call me a hoarder. So I've got heaps of stuff. We could do a whole episode on all the crap I've got.
Good job. You've got thousands and thousands of acres somewhere to store all this stuff. What's your favourite Perkins engineering car of all time?
I get asked this quite a lot. The PE17, the 93 car that we recently restored and finished off was pretty special, and to have that there for the anniversary of, 30 years. They're all special in a way. I mean, my first car was chassis 40. We raced in Super 2. I mean, I definitely would say 17, but there's a few there that are pretty special. They've all got their own stories.
Would you buy a house from James Courtney?
Yeah, I reckon I would. Yep.
He's pretty convincing. I think he's definitely onto a good career path there.
I'd cut his commissions out, so that's why I'd buy it out of him.
What's next on the retro livery list?
We were actually thinking about a bit of a fan vote. So I don't know if I can give too much away there. And we've done 2 or 3 on the Ford side and 2 or 3 on the Holden side, which may end up on each other's cars anyway. But there's a few rippers there. But I don't reckon I can give it away just yet.
No, it was worth a try. It was worth a try.
Something pretty cool.
Favourite track, and you can't say Bathurst.
Well, yeah, okay. Sandown's pretty cool. I love Sandown in a supercar and a Formula Ford. So I would say Sandown.
And last question, have you ever taken your old man's Unimog through a drive-through bottle-o?
No, I haven't.
That'd be fun. Be interesting.
You've given me an idea.
You'd get some looks as long as it fits under the roof. You'd get some looks, I reckon.
I just wish the big camper Unimog he's got. I wish that he had that when I was like 16 or 17, and we could have turned up at like a music festival and been like king of the camp.
Absolutely. Look, thanks for joining us, Jack. I hope you have a great off season. Really appreciate your time.
Hey, you're welcome, mate. Thanks for having me.
And anyone that does have an interest in farming, Jack also hosts a podcast called Cab Confession with Hoislers. Is it Hoislers? Have I said that right?
Yeah, that's it. Hoisler's Cab Confessions. Get around us on Spotify or wherever you listen to your pods.
If you're into farming, give that a listen. We'll be back soon with more hard card. Don't forget to subscribe to the Authentic Collectables YouTube channel and hit the little bell so you never miss an episode.